Hello and welcome. You're about to hear from a hardworking self-starter who's taken a leap of faith to build a business of his own right here in Polk County. This is Polk Entrepreneur. Welcome to Polk Entrepreneur. On this episode, we sit down with a Lakeland contractor who's used his education and experience to turn a family tragedy into a small business, one that has blossomed into a large commercial construction company with 4 offices located around the state. In addition, his community efforts have earned him top honors, receiving the Jerry Annis Leadership Award. This is the story of Frank Kendrick and NuJak.
So I attended the University of Florida, majored in building construction, and obtained a bachelor's degree in building construction, and took a job out of college working with Cummins Construction Company in Tampa. At the time, they had just started a construction division. They're basically an environmental firm, and started as a construction superintendent in West Palm Beach. My first project was a 250-unit apartment complex, and I was an assistant superintendent. And then the next project was over in Sarasota, and it was a 165-unit apartment complex, and I was a superintendent there as well. So Cummins put me with a guy named Roy Jarin. Roy he'd been in construction for 40 years, and he had built a little bit of everything: airports, hospitals, you name it. And Roy had a bad case of arthritis, and he hired me, called me the kid. I was fresh out of college, really didn't know much, but Roy was brilliant, and he was a very hard-nosed superintendent, and he taught me, everything that I knew. That actually became the foundation of how we started our company, NuJak. Roy was a stickler for detail, and he was very high on quality control. It was not atypical for Roy to go and get a sledgehammer and a can of spray paint and knock down a wall if the wall was out of plumb. He was a stickler for documentation. He was an excellent communicator, consensus builder, and really focused a lot on constructability. So all of those things that I just mentioned: constructability analysis, quality control, communication, all those things became literally the foundation, parts of the foundation for when we started our company. So it prepared me quite well. After we finished the project in Sarasota, Cummins had another project in Jacksonville, and I was preparing for that, and had been married for 2 years, had a son, and my wife, she moved from our home in West Palm and moved to Lakeland temporarily. And so my commute, and I was living in Sarasota, so I would commute to Lakeland on the weekends. And her mother cooks the best Sunday dinners, and was cooking one of her infamous Sunday dinners Saturday night, and thought that she had needed some additional ingredients and needed to run to Publix, and thought she turned the stove off, but she turned it on high. And she went to the store and came back, and the entire home had been destroyed by fire. And it was a very difficult time for the family, in that their insurance policy had just recently been canceled because there's some break-ins in the area. And so that's the worst possible thing that can happen, is you lose everything in your home, your entire home, and you don't have insurance. And so I moved here to Lakeland temporarily to rebuild their home. And that was 26, 27 years ago. actually had to start a company, and this was our first project, residential home. And it was every bit a part of what I had always envisioned. My dad was a contractor of sorts, and so I had always aspired to be my own boss and be a contractor. And so this was the fulfillment of that dream, is to literally have my own company and to be building again. So that was great. So we started in 1992, and it was the middle of a recession, and so economically it was not the best time to start a business, and that was over 26 years ago in Polk County, and Polk County 26 years ago is not the county that it is today. The county, the cities, each of the cities has grown tremendously in the way of diversity and inclusion and extending opportunities to folk that it may not have been exclusive, that you're denying people opportunity as much as it could just be inclusive of doing business with who you know and who you like. And when we started our business here, it was difficult. Trying to find the business and trying to get the opportunities. The opportunities is what we wanted. We knew what we could do if you had just give us the opportunity. So here's a kid coming in saying, "Hey, give me an opportunity." Why? Why should I when it ain't broke? So why try to fix something that ain't broke? And so trying to make that argument as to why we should be given that opportunity, or even not necessarily why, or just motivating a potential client to want to do business with us, to diversify and to do something different than what they've done, was a challenge. It was a challenge, very difficult. One of the things that I had seen when I moved here, building the homes, was that a lot of the homes that were considered affordable housing just didn't have, they were matchbox shotgun houses. So I felt like we could build an affordable house, but give it that curb appeal that you see in some of the other larger homes. Vaulted ceilings, arch windows, columns, those kind of things. And we started doing that, building affordable homes in that. I met Bobcat, his name is Robert, but I met Bobcat while building the Stratford Oaks apartment complex in Sarasota. He was a framer from Tennessee, and he and I hit it off very well. And so when that project ended, I said, "Well, Bobby, why don't you come with me over to Lakeland and help me rebuild my in-laws' home?" And of course he came, and we built the home. And then someone else said, "Hey, can you build a home for us?" And I said, "Well, Bobby, looks like we got another job." And so we started in that, and then we started doing all kinds of jobs and hiring people and just having fun, but just building a business together. So we had this thing that, whenever we do a project, 1/3 of the profits would go to him, 1/3 would go to me, and then 1/3 would go to the company to be able to build the company. And so that worked out real well. But what I was trained to do in University of Florida, I was not able to really utilize as well. UF really didn't focus you as much to build homes as it does to allow you to be a construction manager. And so I remember my dad, when I told him that I was going to build affordable housing, and he said, "Well, son, that's admirable." He said, "But you obviously don't intend to make any money." And I didn't know what he meant at the time, but I later found out that the margins were very small, but high benefit, obviously, being able to put someone in a home it gives them some pride in their home. But we weren't making a lot of money in that. But after about 2 years of business, we found ourselves seeking bankruptcy protection. We had taken some bad jobs, and at the time that was a ton of money, and it still is, but it was $98,000 in debt. And we had two different creditors taking us to court at the time. And it was a very difficult time for us and our family. My wife was working, and I was so-called working at NuJak, but we had found ourselves in a bad situation. And there was this moment that of course I turned to the Word of God, and I grabbed the Bible, and so I just slipped my hand underneath and I flipped it over and I just started reading, and it was turned to 2 Corinthians, the 9th chapter, around verse 8, and it says, "He that gives seed to the sower will both administer bread for your food and increase your seed sown and increase the fruits of your righteousness." And, at that moment, I took a pen and I wrote "me" real big. I still have that Bible right now. It's beside my drawer, very worn Bible, but I wrote "me" and I drew an arrow to that scripture. And I remember saying, "God, if you didn't mean that for me, I'm taking it anyway." And I remember my wife and I had some money, really crazy. Maybe people might understand it, but we couldn't put the money in the bank, but we had it under the bed. And I remember telling her that I believe God wanted us to give it all. And she said, "Fine." Maybe a month later, I got a call from the Lakeland Center, and they said that they had a project that they were going to redo the Lakeland Center, and wanted to know if I wanted to participate. And it was kind of one of those moments I'm like, okay, what is this? Am I being punked, And ended up, we got our first commercial contract. It was a $250,000 contract, and we were so excited to get on that project, and we worked hard. The contract, by the time it was over with, it was a $550,000 contract. And we made enough money to pay out all of our debt, and to give quite a bit to the kingdom. And that was the beginning of a new moment for us, and that was in 1995. 1997, 98, we started working with Mid-Florida Credit Union. We had an opportunity. They had a small facility that they wanted to renovate in Bartow, and we were so excited about that opportunity, and we gave them graphs and schedules and all kinds of things, and they were like, "Oh, we've never gotten this from any of our contractors." And again, we started working in that way, and for them, and having to hire people and needing capital to be able to hire the people and to meet the demands of a growing business. I realized very quickly that we needed to be very strategic about what we did. And so literally we would start writing strategic plans. I had never written a business plan up until that point, but really started looking down the road a little bit, and started writing plans that were very functional about who's our typical client, what is our typical client looking for, what resources will we need to be able to meet the demands for those clients, economic, human resources, what are those things that we'll need, how do we get access to them, and all of those things that most business owners need to understand as you're running a business. So right now our typical clients are churches. We do quite a few churches. Probably by volume, almost 40-50% of our projects are churches. And then we do schools, K-12 and higher education. And then we do banks, credit unions, banks, and then we do commercial facilities, you name it. So that's the typical client of ours. And we do work with CRAs, particularly in our South Florida office. We're working more with the CRAs down south. And we've recently got into healthcare about 3 years ago. And that is a growing market for us as well. You know, there's nothing like the free enterprise and being an entrepreneur, you know, if you're successful, of course, and being able to enjoy the fruits of your labor, if you will. Being able to give back to the community. We do lots of things with, particularly with at-risk youth, being a role model for them. All those are, you know, just wonderful, wonderful things for me that being a business owner, owning your own business has afforded those opportunities and those rewards. You know, being able to have the flexibility of owning your own business and being able to do the things that you want to do. My wife told me that the mayor wanted us to go out to dinner with he and his wife, and I said, sure, yeah, let's do that. And so she came by the office, and we went down to a local to city building, and it was a Leadership Lakeland event. And I said, why would Bill want us to be at a Leadership Lakeland event to go to dinner? I mean, couldn't we have just found a restaurant? And I said, okay, all right. Well, but I had an opportunity to see a lot of old friends that I hadn't seen in years. And so I was sitting there, and my wife as they were preparing to make the Jerry Annis Award presentation, my wife grabbed the program, and she showed me the list of people, and she said, you ever think you'd be on this list? And I looked at her, I was like, right. And I said, this is like a who's who in Lakeland. And she just chuckled, she smiled. And so as they're describing this recipient, I was sitting there and I kept thinking, I was like, oh my gosh, this guy or person sounds so familiar. I mean, we have a lot of things in common. And I started surveying the room, and I'm looking around the room, and I'm saying, you know, I know most everyone in this room, and wow, who is this that fits this tape? And so they continue to go on, and it was just getting, and I should have known, because she kept looking at me. Bill Mutz kept looking at me, and different people would turn and look, and I'm assuming folk that maybe have knew who they were talking about. But what got me was this moment when they said, and he has a son, an adopted son, that is graduating from Liberty University and is attending Cincinnati to play football for the Cincinnati Bearcats. And I was like, oh no. I said, there's definitely no one else in this room. And so it was at that moment that I realized that it was me. And my family was hiding. My sister from out of town, my aunt, but they were all hiding in the lobby. And so as they announced it, as I went up to receive the award, then all the family came out. And that was just a wonderful moment for me to, you know, be appreciated by your family, to be recognized by your peers and community for, you know, the work that you've done in the community. And so it was after that I had these moments of reflection and debriefing with my sons and my daughter and my wife. And, you know, my sons were telling me, and my daughter was telling me how much they appreciated that I did not sacrifice the family, you know, for success. And my daughter was telling me that I was the Jerry Annis Award winner for her as well. And so that was just a wonderful moment. My dad used to, this is one of his statements that he makes, but he said, only a fool has to learn everything on his own and won't take somebody's word for it. And it was one of those statements that I stuck a pin in early. And he also said that, if you aspire to be successful, go and talk to people that have been successful. But he also encouraged me to talk to people who were not successful. My dad would also say that you can talk to anybody successful by reading their books. Stephen Covey was one of those people, and he starts the book talking about values. What is it that you value? And he accelerates it to the point where you're at the end of your career and you've reached all those milestones, and you look around and see what you've accomplished, but see what you've sacrificed. And family was one of those things that I did not want to sacrifice. He told the story of a guy who had finally reached his pinnacle of success, and it was in the car with his family and reached some title, and his daughter said, Dad, I'm very proud of what you've been able to accomplish, but I would have loved to see you at one of my recitals. And then the son said, yeah, Dad, we're very happy for you, but I would have loved to see you at one of my soccer games. And it was at that moment, at the end of his career, that he realized that the things that he valued the most were the things that he sacrificed the most. And I didn't want to be that guy. So fortunately, early on, I would work, get off around 6 o'clock, and be home in time for dinner with the family and homework help. And the kids were in bed by 9 o'clock. And so I would oftentimes go back to the office and work, another 3, 4, 5, sometimes all night at the office, and just being at, 95% of every football game, recital, play the kids were part of. It means and meant a lot to me. And I was able to have that moment in the car. My kids talked about the fact that I didn't sacrifice them and the time with them. And it was a full circle, because it let me know that I did something right in that area. So, I was raised in poverty as a kid. My mom was a single parent, and my dad and my mom were never married, and there were 5 of us. Just seeing, and we all lived in a 1-bedroom apartment. And Mom slept on the couch, and all of us slept in 2 mattresses pushed together. And so being raised in the projects and seeing what poverty was like, being raised in schools where, some of the kids that were a little more affluent or middle class could wear things that I couldn't wear. Just those kind of things. It was, growing up, and that was one of the reasons why I became an entrepreneur at a very, very early age. Even before, my first jobs was when I was 9 years old, and I was cutting lawns for people in the neighborhood, and I got a paper route when I needed to. Got my first job when I was 13 years old. Real job where I was working, and just all kinds of things. I learned to work hard for what I wanted. And so obviously when the time came that I was able to be successful and could have some money, I wanted to load up on all those things that I wanted to do, the cars, the house, and all those kind of things. And again, as I mentioned, as I began to mature, reading the book, The Millionaire Next Door, and just talking about the typical profile of a millionaire and just all those kind of things, I realized that they don't consume, everything that they make. Reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, those kind of books really helped me to see that, okay, this was fun in and of itself, but it's a bigger thing to save, to invest, and to and you don't have to drive, everything that you make. And so, but being able to see it grow, you build relationships, hire people, and build a company has been very, very rewarding. And I'm a man of faith, and so being able to share, with our people, our faith, as well as help them in their journey, has just been very rewarding. Yeah, I think the first thing that I would say is put God's kingdom first. That to me was something that I learned back in 1995, for me, that's tops. Secondly, you have to work incredibly hard. You have to be able to sacrifice and do what no one else wants to do, but you can't be lazy. Thirdly, you have to delay gratification. You can't spend everything that you make. You have to, deal with. I mean, my wife and I shared the same car for 3 years. And though we could have gone out and purchased another vehicle, we were concerned about, making sure that we didn't go out and create more debt for ourselves. But those delayed gratification is something that I learned early, but I learned later much, much better. And some of the things that I wish I would have did even earlier. But delaying gratification. So putting God first, working extremely hard, delaying gratification. And lastly would be, writing that vision. Without vision, there's a scripture that says, without vision, people perish. Without vision, companies perish. Without vision, families perish. Like being able to write down, that's one of the things that Sanjay and I have done. And it's gotten to the point now it's a community thing, but we started writing our vision when we were 25 years old. And it's so funny that the house that we put down, the number of kids that we put down, just so many of the things that we're living and walking in right now, we put it when we were 25 years old. And I often share that and show those to people. But, writing that vision and making it plain, over the years, we've gone from doing the written vision areas, and it's evolved to so many different areas. But now it's down to we do vision boards, and so we have youth group that we do that with. We have some friends that we do that with, and literally in this room, the early part of this year, we had 2 different sessions of people that came in, and we had the posters, we had all kinds of stuff, and we did vision boards. And so now it's just a very neat thing we do, and we've been doing it with our kids every year since they were born. So, just being able to write that vision, keep it in front of your eyes so you can stay focused. So those are the things.
That's all, folks, for this episode of Polk Entrepreneur. We would like to thank Frank Kendrick for sharing his story of becoming an entrepreneur in Polk County. If you have a dream of starting your own business, there are many resources available to help you get started. Contact the Polk County Board of County Commissioners today at 863-534-6000 or polk-county.net to start making your dream a reality. Thanks for watching Polk Entrepreneur. I'm your host, Cedric Joseph. I'll see you next time.